Am I the a-hole for not returning my engagement ring after my fiancé passed away? I, 31 female, recently lost my fiancé, 37 male, Jake. We've been together for 6 years, and his death was unexpected and I'm still mourning. At a funeral, which I arranged and paid for, his brother, 32 male, Jim, asked me when I'm going to return the engagement ring to the family. For context, the engagement ring with which Jake proposed is an ancient family heirloom. It's a gorgeous ring, but what makes it priceless is the story behind it. Jake got the ring from his grandma a month after we started dating, as he claimed he knew back then he would marry me someday and wanted to get his grandma's blessings on the ring. When he proposed, his grandma already passed away, so having the blessings put on the ring made it extra special for the both of us. I asked Jim if he's serious, to which he said yes. Apparently, his long-term girlfriend Stacy saw the ring a while ago and fell in love with it and the story behind it, so she kept nagging him to get her something similar, which he couldn't. He figured since I can no longer marry Jake, he can propose to Stacy with it. I told him that he is rude, that the ring was blessed especially for Jake and I in mind. And even if that wasn't the case, bringing it up during Jake's funeral is incredibly disrespectful. After the funeral, I got a message from Stacy saying it would mean the world for her to be the new owner of the ring, and I could always think of her and Jim's wedding as the bittersweet ending to my relationship. She said the ring was blessed, so one of the grandsons can marry the love of his life, and since Jim is the only living grandson left, he has a claim to it. I just blocked her. My ex-mother-in-law also reached out to me and said that although she understands my pain, I can't keep the ring since it's a family heirloom, so I should suck it up and give it to Jim. I snapped and told her no. The ring is staying with me and following me to the grave if need be. It's a beautiful symbol of Jake's love, and I won't let Jim and Stacy sully the memory of him. The ring is legally mine, so all they can do is cry about it and be bitter. They keep harassing me on social media saying I'm a bad person, and that I stole the family heirloom to spite Jim and Stacy out of jealousy, but I ignore them. Today, I met up with my brother and he said that although Jim's approach was highly inappropriate and being selfish for keeping the ring as a keepsake, I could always wear different jewelry that Jake bought me in his memory, but they could never replace an heirloom that's been in their family for generations. I'm now back home and I can't stop thinking about it. Up until this point, I was sure I did everything right, but maybe I'm just being blinded by my grief. A friend suggested I ask for an objective opinion and recommend this place. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the little update. Since you paid for the funeral and they didn't, offer to sell them the ring back for the cost of the funeral. If you're not family entitled to keep the heirloom in their opinion, you shouldn't have had to pay for the funeral expenses. The brother was an a-hole to ask for it at the funeral. Otherwise, keep it. Not the a-hole. Exactly my thoughts as well. They didn't chip in a cent, it seems, for the death of their son or brother. You were family enough to pay for the funeral. You were family enough to have grandmother's blessing. You were family enough to your partner. The ring is yours, OP. The memory is yours. Gift it to someone whose love you want to bless, if you so choose. Otherwise, do what makes you happy, not a-hole. This is exactly how I feel about it. It's not like OP just showed up. They'd been together for 6 years, and the owner of the ring gave it for her. The brother approached her at the funeral that OP arranged and paid for and asked for the ring. That was horrifically inappropriate and cold-hearted. So, in the middle of the funeral, I feel like I can't stress this enough, the brother demanded the ring back, and now over however many days or weeks of grieving, several people are harassing OP for this ring. The ring given to her by her fiancé, that again was given by her grandmother. Not a-hole OP. Please just block them all. What kills me is the fact his girlfriend says to see them marry as a bittersweet ending to her relationship. If I was in her shoes and with how they approached, I understand wanting a family heirloom back. But they didn't help with the funeral. It was all being extremely insensitive towards her losing someone she loves. I wouldn't want to do them any favors either. Not sure if it'd be grief, spite, or right on my end, but they certainly could have handled that a lot better. Not a-hole. They don't want it back because it's a family heirloom. They want it back because Stacy is shallow and Jim can't spend the money. If he could buy the same ring, they wouldn't care, but are using the family BS to manipulate you. Tacky and disgusting. I can't possibly imagine asking someone who lost their husband for the engagement ring back. Now for the little update. I'm writing this to answer some commonly asked questions and because I think I've made up my mind on what to do with the ring. 1. I met Jake's grandma. She passed away a year before our engagement, and by that time I was already introduced to the family. 2. We were supposed to get married on October 31, 2022. We met during a Halloween party, so we thought it was fitting. My brother helped me cancel the wedding venue and catering since I didn't have the heart to do it. 3. We don't have children. Due to personal reasons, we never planned on having any biological kids. However, we did plan on adopting/fostering after our marriage was finalized. 4. Stacy did mention a couple of times how gorgeous my engagement ring is and asked if she could try it on, but I refused. Back then, I thought she was just trying to hint to Jim he should propose already. Didn't think she was actually interested in the ring itself. 5. The ring is legally mine. In Jake's will, I'm written as the beneficiary. The will was written 2 years ago and hasn't been changed since. 6. Jake passed away in a work-related accident. I claimed life insurance, plus sued the company he worked at since I believe his death was due to their negligence and could have been avoided. I'm currently in the legal battle with the company. 7. I paid for the funeral because I wanted to make sure everything was organized the way Jake would have wanted it. As horrible as it sounds, I was financially well off before Jake's death, and now due to his will, life insurance and company compensation, I'm practically rich. So I had the funds to organize him a really nice funeral. 8. When I told ex-mother-in-law that I'll take the ring to my grave, I meant it. When Jake passed, I considered joining him a couple of times before finally starting going to therapy. I don't think I'll ever date or get engaged again. It's too painful. 9. As for my decision, I would rather wait for the hell to freeze over than let Stacy and Jim get a ring. For now, the ring is staying with me. However, I'm considering the following option. Jake has one cousin, 10 female, that lives far away. I used to babysit her while her parents still live in town. I think I'll gift her the ring after she graduates high school and pay for her college tuition using the life insurance money I got. I hope that way I can do right by both Jake and his grandma. They say time heals. Hopefully 8 years will be enough for me to let go of the ring. If not, I guess we'll see then. I'm not telling anyone in his family what I have planned. Let them think they've lost the ring forever. I think it's a punishment fit for their actions. By the way, I lost a comment that said this, but someone compared Stacy to Gollum. I don't know who it was, but this genuinely made me laugh for the first time in a while. Thank you. Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my boyfriend for making me leave my best friend's wedding? My boyfriend, 27, and I, 26, have been together for 2 years. He's a good heart and is normally rational, but his one issue is that he expects to accompany me in every occasion, no matter how big or small. He even went with me to my ex-boyfriend's funeral after days of begging. Now, my best friend got married a few days ago. It was very small, and only close family and friends were invited. My boyfriend couldn't come because of the +1 rule, and he pitched a hissy fit, saying my best friend has no respect for my relationship, and was shocked when he learned that I was still going to attend. He told me that if he can't go, then I'm expected to not go as well. But that is my best friend, and I had to respect her rules. He gave me an ultimatum that either we go together or I stay home with him. I ended up going because, again, I respected my friend's rules. He was angry with me and kept calling the entire 2-hour drive, then stopped. Later, I got a text from his friend telling me he, my boyfriend, got into an accident and was taken to the hospital. I freaked out. He gave me the address and I had to leave the wedding and told my friends why. I was crying the entire drive home and kept calling his friend, but got no response. I arrived to the hospital and asked about my boyfriend, and they checked and told me he wasn't there. My anxiety reached 160% as I kept calling his friends one by one. I just went home, and there he was, along with his friend. He saw me and said he was sorry, but this was the only way he can get me home after I left him alone. After the initial shock, I just blew up yelling at him about lying and making me leave my friend's wedding, and having me literally go to the hospital and freaking out because of him. I kicked his friend out and we got into an argument. He kept talking about how much I love him, thus I left, which is my own doing, not his, and he was just trying to see if I really chose my friend's wedding over him. He then argued that my friend caused this and I shouldn't agree with her to exclude him. I said what he did was horrible and called him horrible, and then went to my room. It was awful because my friends kept calling to check in on him because they thought he was really at a hospital. He said I overreacted and that I yelled at the wrong person. Am I the a-hole? Did I go too far? Info. He has a history of mental health issues but got better the past few months. He also had a recent death in his family which really affected his health generally. Now for the comments. This is abuse. Opie's boyfriend doesn't love her. He loves controlling her. This is absolutely abuse, and Opie hasn't gone far enough yet. Not until she is out of this toxic relationship. Not a-hole. I was about to come here to make exactly this post, but let me add that the boyfriend does not indeed have a good heart if he lies about being hospitalized. I couldn't imagine the anguish and guilt that likely followed. He clearly doesn't care about your feelings or well-being if he's willing to resort to that to get his way. You're not a-hole, but there's really no saving this relationship. I don't care if this adds to the stereotype that Reddit tells people to leave too soon, but everyone else is right. Abuse just doesn't get better. Even if he somehow wakes up and starts trying to make it better, you have no responsibility to him to stick around until it does. I hope she recognizes that. She seems to think it's a one-time thing, but his insistence on accompanying her everywhere is hugely controlling and frankly suffocating. My wife and I love spending time together, but we also enjoy doing things with other people on our own. People who have confidence in their relationship and who trust their partner don't have a problem with this. Her boyfriend has some serious issues and she needs to run. If she decides to stay, she needs to see a therapist. Somebody who can make her see that this is not rational behavior and she should not tolerate it. Not a-hole. This is called coercive control and is a form of domestic violence. You should leave for sure. This. OP, I dated a guy like this in my early 20s. It does not get better. Run! OP needs to be very careful leaving. She needs to find a safe house that boyfriend doesn't know about. Yep. I had a friend who dated a guy who constantly threatened to end himself over things like her forgetting something at the grocery store or not staying home with him when he had a cold. It kept her nervous and on eggshells, careful not to upset the a-hole. I was so happy when she finally kicked that useless a-hole to the curb. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for siding with my mother when she and my wife got into an argument? My wife and I had our first child around 2 months ago. She was home isolated during her entire pregnancy after the 6-month mark because of some pregnancy complications. We had also agreed that the first 2 months after birth that our parents and siblings would be the only ones allowed to visit and see the baby, and our friends and the rest of the relatives could wait. As soon as the baby turned 2 months, my wife started trying to get back into her social life again. Sometimes she'd bring the baby with her, but sometimes she'd expect me to babysit. Whenever I couldn't babysit, she'd call her mom to ask her if she could care for the baby for a few hours. My wife's a great mom and she truly cares for our baby, but it's frustrating how she feels the need to go out the entire time. One day, while she was out shopping with a friend of hers, I was babysitting the kid, and my mom visited me and asked where my wife was. I told her that she's out with a friend. My mom got very mad about how my wife went out, and she told me I have no backbone for not calling her out and telling her to stay home with the baby. I told my mom I'll handle this, but my mom waited until my wife got back home and she started scolding her. It wasn't a proud moment of me, and I really didn't want my mom to get involved, but my wife needed to hear it from someone else too. My mom told my wife that she is irresponsible and that she should cut down her meetings with friends and stay home to care for the kid as a proper mother would. My wife tried to defend herself, saying how I was always out with my friends both during her pregnancy and after she gave birth. But both I and my mom tried to explain how me going out is not the same as her going out. My mom told her that the little walks and coffee hangouts with her friends are over, and that she better get used to the fact that her social life will now be limited. It sucks, but that's how it is. I agreed with my mother and all that, and my wife is not speaking to me for days. She even sleeps in the guest room now and took the baby's crib there as well. She will only cook for herself and the baby and not for me. My mother-in-law and my sister-in-law have texted me saying I was a huge a-hole for this, and so was my mom. So I should not be surprised my wife is acting like that towards me. You're the a-hole. Notice how you say taking care of your own kid is babysitting? You didn't even mention the amount of time she goes out versus you, but you just want us to trust you that it's different for you? You don't even mention speaking to your wife before your mom said anything. Too bad your wife has 2 kids at home. Hopefully she sees the light and leaves the whiny entitled one. Genuinely hoping she gives that entitled one back to his mother. You're the a-hole simply for referring to look after your own child as babysitting. Yep, absolute he's the a-hole. I'm not gonna lie, I only read as far as babysitting the kid and that was enough for me. I knew I was going to put you're the a-hole just from the title, but good lord, you really suck. You and your wife decided to become a family and team when you got married, even before the baby. Your mom is now extended family. She should never feel comfortable to scold your wife, especially in her own home. And that's your job to set the boundary. Both of you are the parents to that baby. You are not babysitting, you are being a parent. I'm going to assume your wife stays home with the baby and you are the breadwinner. So not only are you interacting with adults daily, but you're getting an uninterrupted lunch break, and even getting alone time in the car and to run any errands before or after work. Your wife is home with the baby completely dependent on her all day long. She has to stop everything for feedings. She can't just take a nap, take a shower, or even go to the bathroom without listening and worrying about the baby. She deserves time with other adults or even just herself to remain sane. Postpartum depression is so serious, and unsupportive spouse increases it so much. He literally went out while she was on bed rest. She probably felt so isolated and alone, worrying if this new baby she was responsible for growing would be okay, and you were out with friends. But God forbid she shops for a few hours. Don't be surprised if she leaves you with your mommy in the future. I hate when part-time parent says they babysit, normally complaining about how the full-time parent needs a break and they feel forced to babysit. You're the a-hole.
Update. Friendships ended because I won't pay for someone to go on a trip. Original post. Realizing that I had a leech as a friend, and I'm disappointed in myself. Lori always wants to participate, but never contributes. And most of the time, it never really bothered me. Our group of 6 always contributed extra for things, like concerts, weekend trips, and so on. In high school, it was because Lori came from a poorer family than the rest of us, and wasn't able to get a job due to parentification, had 4 younger siblings. Then in college, it was because she couldn't work and maintain her grades without losing her scholarship. Now, she can't contribute anything because she's struggling financially and didn't have the means to save anything. And I got irritated, admittedly because she spends her money in crap ways. I've called her the Carrie Bradshaw group, which wasn't appreciated, but it is very much true in how she uses her income. We've been planning this trip for 4 years. I know it's awful to look at what someone has and judge their finances, but Lori's the same person who had no expenses during pandemic because she was living with me and my great-grandmother. She didn't pay for groceries, wasn't charged rent, still had her job, was getting hazard pay. Lori waited even until it came time to start paying for everything to say she didn't have it. She said this to me one-on-one while we were out shopping for the trip. Her idea. Lori wanted to go to stores that weren't cheap. I asked if she was sure, and she claims she wanted to treat herself. She spent just over $1,300. And then we go to lunch and she has the nerve to tell me she can't afford a trip. A whopping $2,683 per person for 15 days. Of course I said no, and guess what? She brings in the rest of the group 2 days later, and all of them are on board with splitting her expenses. Translation, they would cover half the costs among them, and I'd be stuck with the other half. Because I make the most money. And saying no means I'm an a-hole. Calling Lori out for blowing half of what she'd have to pay for the trip on crap she didn't need was too harsh and uncalled for? They claimed that she deserved to feel good about herself after the life she had. Like I wasn't raised by my grandparents and neglected by my parents in favor of their stepchildren. Wasn't working through high school and maintaining my grades to be valedictorian. Like I wasn't struggling until I got a good internship because I had to work. Yeah, I'm financially secure now, but why the heck should Lori be rewarded for bad spending habits? They're all upset now because I told them I'd go on a trip by myself. They didn't think I'd cancel it and go through with booking a trip for myself. It's costing me more, but screw them. They want Lori to go on a trip? They can plan one and take her without me involved. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Call it a very expensive life lesson, and now you have shed loads of weight and can find true friends who appreciate you for you, not your income. Your so-called friends will find out soon enough what type of a person she is, and they may finally get it when it is them who have to cough up hard-earned money to make her life easier. Spot on. She's a huge leech who plays the victim. Couldn't have said that better myself. WTF? No. If you can't afford it, don't come. And sure as heck don't let me watch you spend more than half the cost, then tell me you can't afford it. And who the heck are your friends to decide you'll be paying half? No. If they want to cover the expenses, they can. But they can't volunteer you to do it. Why are you still friends with her? Or any of them? We had a friend like this once, and we just stopped inviting her. If my friends weren't all over it, I would have said I'm not coming. Like I said, it hadn't bothered me before. But she moved out last year, claimed she had a better grasp on her finances, and then hits me with this. I'm not going to be friends with any of them after this. Does this mean she didn't pay living expenses for 3+ years? She lived off your family's generosity, including groceries, for 3+ years? Yes, it does, and I'm genuinely angry looking back on it. She lost her apartment just before COVID, and my great-grandma suggested I let her stay until she got on her feet. That turned into her quarantining with us, and she paid no expenses to save up and get a new place. Most people who have some assemblage of character would have offered to pay something while at your great-grandmother's house. For 3 years is astounding. No one lives for free unless you're a child. Good riddance to her. Now for the update a week later. Seriously, I get called mean, selfish, cruel, and a bunch of other insults for not bankrolling idiot's life. Decide to cut contact and end a friendship, and now they want to make up? Lori, the primary leech, has horrible spending habits. Think Carrie Bradshaw from Exodus City. She'll blow her money on designer clothing and shoes, and then ask you to cover her expenses for trips. And the more I think about how much money I've wasted on her over the years, the angrier I become. Lori has apparently burned more bridges in the week or so I've been no contact. They apparently decided that they can't afford to bring Lori on a similar trip to what I had originally planned for us. It was 15 days split between Portugal, Spain, and Italy. One of the group, Jenna, went to my grandpa because she couldn't get in contact with me. I had blocked all of them, mainly because I got sick of arguing. Grandpa told her now wasn't a good time, though refused to give her any details. She came back 4 days in a row until he relented. He called me for her and gave me the gist of things before I told him to send her to the coffee shop I was at. A post for another day because I'm still processing my earlier meeting and know I'll need to vent about it. The meeting with Jenna went to hell in a handbasket. She started by telling me the group had planned a new trip and she knows I'm mad. But canceling on them and then not sharing the agency was really cruel. They found an agency to travel through, but to keep the time they had off from work means they have to pay more. Cheapest they could get was $4,000 a person. I didn't respond, mainly because yes, she continued to blame me for their crap, like it wasn't their fault I canceled and stopped talking to them. When I told her that it was their fault, Jenna agreed that it was. She revealed that they tried to talk Lori into returning everything she brought so she could contribute her part. In her words, they can't afford half the things I can. Jenna personally believes that Lori's need for designer things is because of me. I didn't snap immediately at this and let her ramble about it. I know you don't notice it, but you're always wearing nice things and spending money on nice places. You're always buying expensive makeup, getting your nails and your hair done. She just wants that lifestyle too, and it's like you're rubbing it in her face. All of us are at fault. And yes, I do spend my money on those things. But as I told Lori and now Jenna, I can afford that lifestyle. I budget for those things. I thrift shop and a good number of my nice things are secondhand. Yes, I put a lot of effort into my appearance, but I also live below my means. I live in the house my great-grandmother owns outright and pay utilities, shop in bulk and local markets for food, and have good insurance that covers great-grandma's medical expenses. I, again, thrift for my nicer things, or save for them or wait for a sale. I have enough in my lost my job savings account to last a year. Yes, I have savings account just for that, and continue to add to it from every paycheck. Everyone that knows me are aware of how I can afford what I afford. I don't make an effort to hide this. However, it is not my fault Lori refuses to be smart with her spending. I said all of this to Jenna and she had a nerve to cry. She said not everyone can have that type of security and unlike me, they can't afford a last-minute trip. And Lori especially couldn't. I cut her off when she started on Lori's sad childhood and just let her have it. I told her she was fixated on my finances and lifestyle, but that wasn't my fault. She and the rest of the group all have decent careers. They all had better safety nets than I did, and it made them complacent. I didn't have that. Yes, I was middle class growing up, but I wasn't as well off as them. Yes, I had a grandpa who would spoil me, but it wasn't to the extent they think. I still drive his old Impala. I had been the first to get a car in our group, right? Because his eyesight was going bad. He couldn't drive me around like their parents did. And don't get me started on college itself. Lori had a financial aid packet because she was poor. Jenna and the rest had family that could pay off their tuition and living costs. And I got barely anything aid-wise and had to work because my grandparents couldn't afford it. And my parents refused to acknowledge me. If I hadn't landed an internship turned career that paid off my education, I'd still be in debt. Jenna kept crying and I told her to stop, that I'm sick of them and they're crying. I threw her getting cut off by her parents in her face, told her that it was because she's a financial leech, just like Lori, and that was her problem. I'm sick of them acting like I'm the problem, and I was done listening to her efforts to villainize me. Rather than whining, maybe she should think about why her parents cut her off, and why I am also cutting her off, because she likes to blame everyone and everything for her failures. I shouldn't have said it, but I did. You got kicked out for stealing someone's essay. You wasted their money, and I damn sure won't let you waste mine. Grow the heck up. I don't even bother my family again. Then I left her there crying. Not my finest moment, but seriously, what the actual hell is wrong with people? She spends $1,300 in clothes in front of OP immediately before saying she had no money for the trip? Delusional. But you don't understand. Lori had a tough childhood, and it's really OP's fault for buying nice-looking second-hand clothes that Lori must spend thousands on designer clothes to one-up OP. And since OP doesn't spend all of her money as soon as she makes it, unlike Lori, that means OP has money to pay for others' vacations. Why won't anyone think of poor Lori? You hit the nail on the head. Lori just had to keep trying to one-up OP because she thought that's what OP was doing to her. Not realizing that OP didn't think of Lori when getting herself something nice. OP was thrifting and minding her own business. Lori couldn't understand that. When she grew a spine, she realized that her friends were with her for a lack of spine. I'm not surprised. People don't like getting called out for mooching. There's always an extinction event where everyone gets very angry at the person they can't take advantage of anymore. And what was Lori going to do for spending money on a trip? Even if the 5 of them split the initial trip cost, how is she going to afford to go to places, to eat, etc.? Even if the food was included in the cost, it still means she would be hungry at the airport. OP's friends are perhaps the kind of group where they all once got along, but changed as they progressed into adulthood so they no longer fit. She is better off without them. Yes, there are a lot of Hallmark cards written about being friends forever, but honestly, it's pretty rare. Lots of our friends from elementary, high school, and college are mostly with us because we are all at the same stage of life, at the same time, in the same place. Once everyone is living their adult lives and making their own decisions, lots of friendships fade. Not all of them. My wife and her best friend have known each other for 30 years. But a lot of relationships that started in school don't survive adulthood. Last story. My parents and sister asked me to cancel my vacation and give her the money for child custody legal costs. I said no, and now they're furious. Background. My older sister did a student exchange program when she was in college. She liked it so much there that she ended up staying there. Eventually, later on, she met someone. They have a child who is 8 now, and they were planning on getting married. But their relationship fell apart before the wedding happened. My sister wanted to move back here and bring her child with her. I always thought that if a baby had a parent with U.S. citizenship, it automatically made a baby a citizen no matter where in the world that baby was born. But that's not true. Since my sister and her child's father aren't married, and my sister had not been physically present in the US for years before their child was born, it means their child is not automatically a citizen. Their child could get citizenship, but that would require them 1. To be allowed to enter the country legally as an immigrant, and 2. For them to be in the physical and legal custody of my sister. This is where the problems happen. Their child is a citizen of her father's country, and a court there won't let my sister have custody or bring their child here. All the times my sister has tried and appealed, the courts say the current country is their home. Their child has no ties to the US and has never been here, and my sister has no right to remove them from their home country. They also say the free childcare and better standard of living means their child should stay, and even talk about how much safer it is there versus here. Even though the law about an unmarried mother giving citizenship to their child born in another country has changed, it doesn't apply after the fact. My sister's child was born a year before the law changed, so it doesn't count in their case. The US has an agreement with the country my sister lives in about custody agreements and child support, so the courts here can't do anything. My sister has tried going to court and then appealing decisions both here and in the other country. She has hired lawyers in both countries. She has gone to politicians in both countries. She's had all kinds of consults with experts in international law. And no matter where she turns, the law is against her. And her ex says their child will not ever come here until they are 18 and can decide for themselves. Her choices are either to stay in the other country where her ex has their version of legal and physical custody and sister would have visitation, not 50% but close. She can also try to meet the requirements for citizenship. Or she can move back to St. Louis and then go back to the other country once or twice a year for a visit. To help my sister pay for huge legal bills, my parents remortgaged their house. It was basically paid off, but now they're underwater on it. They gave her their entire savings as well. My mom didn't work after my sister and I were born, but she's had to get a job as a cashier because of my parents' financial situation. My dad won't be able to retire now. They're looking if there's any social assistance because of how bad things are. I'm terrified that something will happen that will make their situation worse, like an accident or illness because of how bad the situation is. Even after all this, they're still hell-bent on helping my sister. I don't have the money to look after them if anything goes wrong. I'm a phlebotomist. I don't have piles of money lying around to help my parents. And even now, they're still giving my sister money. My sister is almost massively in debt. Before now, neither her or my parents asked me for money. But now that my parents and my sister have found out I'm taking a vacation, they want me to cancel it and give the money to my sister. I finished my training in 2020, and the last 4 years in the healthcare sector have been so stressful. I haven't had more than 3 days off in a row since I started my job. I'm going on a Viking cruise, and I've been looking forward to it for over a year. I don't want to cancel it. I currently do not have any debt, but they are pressuring me to go into debt for my sister. My parents have visited my sister's child. They have visited the other country and regularly do video calls and phone calls, but I think my parents and my sister are still in denial about the situation. When I said I'm not canceling my cruise or going into debt to help my sister, all 3 of them got so angry. My sister lost it on me, and my parents backed her up and said they were disappointed in me. Besides my sister's child, the 3 of them are my only family. But my parents and my sister won't talk to me unless it's to tell me how angry they are. It just sucks that they won't talk, even though I know I'm right and won't change my mind. Now for the top comments. Never set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Your parents can choose to let their money go up in flames. You do not have to add your own fuel to a dumpster fire. This, as much money as your parents and sister have poured into the sad situation, no amount from you can possibly make a difference. She is fighting a lost cause, and the only beneficiaries are the lawyers. She will have to remain where she is until daughter is 18, then revisit her and daughter's future. Your poor parents have lost all their assets for a lost cause, sadly. I feel for them, but there is no reason for you to do the same. This is insane. It sucks for your sister, but the situation isn't going to change, and the whole family going broke is not going to make it better. I am sorry you are being treated this way. I understand they are probably scared, but it is not okay. Hopefully your sister can figure out a long-term plan and they will calm down. Honestly, the odds are so against them anyways. Both countries say the child should stay in his home country. He has free healthcare and pretty much so much more privileges he's not going to get in the US. Why take him away from that? It's honestly selfish. They're just throwing away money at this point. It's unfortunate, but there's literally no reason to keep getting into debt for something that's not going to happen. Update. Am I the a-hole for confessing to my wife that she's torturing me after she got assaulted? Original post. I'm 25 male, been married to my wife, 26 female for 4 years. We've been dating since we were teens. We are childhood friends. At this point, we are together for like a decade. This all started a month ago. I went on to my company trip. My boss urged me to attend a trip because it will help me learn more, and it's a golden opportunity for me. So I told my wife and she said yes, I should go. It's just for a week. A few days before my departure, my wife said she's going to attend a party hosted by her friends. I said she shouldn't attend. She got mad and asked me why I'm restricting her. You see, my wife has become quite an alcoholic in past few months. It has become a problem for both of us. So I said if you drink too much, I won't be around to help her. She kept saying she will be fine, but I was adamant. And finally she said she won't attend and I trusted her. I went with my boss and after 3 days, my wife called me. I couldn't pick her call, but when I checked my phone, I saw so many calls and texts from her. And when I did, I immediately called her. She kept yelling at me and said, "Come back right now, come back right now." I panicked as well, and I cut my trip short and went back to her. When I arrived, she hugged me like never before and kept crying and crying. It took a long time, but she told me she was violated. I asked her about the details, and she told me she was ganged up on by a bunch of guys after she got drunk. Till this day, I don't know who these guys are. I asked her multiple times, but she just said she doesn't want to tell me. I asked her to press charges, and she said no, that it will ruin her life even more. This is going on for a month now, but a week ago she went full on crazy mode. She's basically glued to me. Even during shower or bathroom, I see her everywhere. She went as far as locked our house from the inside. I talked to my boss and explained, and he gave me some time to fix it all. Yesterday, I told her she's going too far. She had locked me and herself in our bedroom and didn't let me go anywhere. When I asked her why she is doing this, she said she's scared that I will abandon her. She hugs me so tight even I feel uncomfortable. And when I had enough, I said that she's torturing me. You don't tell me anything. I'm trying to help you, but you don't care. After I said this, she's crying nonstop. And if this goes on, it's going to cost me my job. I won't even be able to feed myself. Forget about feeding her. But the way she is, I think I went too far. Did I say something I shouldn't have? I don't understand anything at this point. Now for the top comments before reading the update. This is way above our pay grade. You calling the local assault hotline would get you in touch with resources that should be applied to both you and your wife. And it wouldn't require reporting it to authorities. You can't fix this yourselves. The dude needs to get that poor woman to a doctor and a therapist pronto. From the recent onset of her alcohol issues, this incident is just the latest. I agree, she is drinking out of nowhere for a reason. I think there is something more than what just happened on his trip. The fact that she won't tell him who is also concerning. She was at a friend's house. I hope it wasn't any of the husbands. You both need counseling. Badly. You need to be prepared for any details that come out. No police, no reports. I don't want to tell you who did it. It doesn't sound good. You think it was family members? Or some people powerful in town / related to the police? Maybe mutual friends are his. It can be anything. Have you talked to a single person who was at a party? Because I'm sorry, but a lot of this doesn't make sense. She was at her friend's house. She got banged on, and not one of her friends had reached out or said anything? Was more likely a gang rape at a party or cheating at a party. Surprised this doesn't have more upvotes. She cheated on bro and is spiraling with the guilt. The not wanting to report it, the not saying who it was, etc. is all just covering for the if I call the cops, they'll say it was consensual and my husband will know I cheated. Now for the update 3 weeks later. I posted my situation last month, and if anyone just wants the LDR, when I went on a trip, she went to a party where she got drunk and she had alcohol problem. I urged her to not go because I won't be there to take care of her, but she called me controlling and went anyway. And while I was on my trip, she called me back urgently and told me she got violated by a bunch of guys. So I'm posting again because I want advice. It turns out the party host was a guy she was having an affair with for the past 5 months. She revealed this all information in our couples counseling. She's undergoing individual counseling, psychology treatment for her trauma, and treatment for her severe alcohol problem. What she said in counseling was that she met a guy at a bar and she was lured by his charm, and they would make out and do other things. But when she went to his party, he invited a bunch of guys she never saw, and they did things to her. I don't want to speak about it or explain. And what she told me without a counselor is that she's coming clean and doesn't want anything to do with him or anyone. She realized that all other men just wants to exploit her vulnerability, and I'm the only man that truly cares for her. And she would never ever look at any other man, only me. We had a family meeting where my parents and siblings and hers came over at my house, and they said that my wife made a mistake and is going through a very tough time. She has changed and learned from her mistake, and I am a great man for taking care of my wife, and I should never think about divorce. I was thinking about divorce, and I only shared this with my colleague who has become my best friend over time. And after I vented, and I'm embarrassed to say that I cried in front of her, she said it's best for me to live alone my whole life than living with her. I ask strangers here for advice, like what should I do? Should I accept her because she changed her ways and take care of her, or just divorce and move on? She was having an affair for 5 months. She did not willingly tell you due to guilt or anything. She had to come clean because something awful happened. Otherwise, you still probably wouldn't know she was cheating. Doesn't seem like she cares about you much, except for what you can do for her. She obviously makes bad decisions, but luckily she has a supportive family. Let them take the lead here while you gently back out. You don't need this, unless you want to be tethered to a cheating alcoholic with emotional issues for the rest of your youth and potentially life. Not a-hole. This, divorce. She cheated, plain and simple. If there was no cheating and a bad situation still happened to her, that would be an entirely different story. But that's not what happened. It is horrible something terrible happened to her, but that doesn't dissolve the cheating. Her mental and emotional health does not trump yours. Why should you stay with somebody who doesn't respect you? She changed her ways? No. Pretty clearly not, since she has recruited both sides of the family to help with manipulating him to stay with her. That's so bad it's scary. I would leave her and take at least a long break from all of them. You're only 25 years old. You are too young to stay in a toxic marriage with a toxic person. People restart their lives at a much older age. You don't have to be anyone's psychological support, crying wall, caregiver, etc., especially if she cheated on you. I understand you have no children. Focus on your future and yourself. Get yourself out of this mess. 25 is so young. There is so much time to meet someone that you will click with and love you back. You can meet people through work, running club, book clubs, sisters of your friends, or college classes. Ask a girl to grab a coffee on Saturday morning. Ask a girl to go see a movie. Get out and live your just starting life. Cut out all these toxic in-laws and toxic wife. Opie is certainly young and able to rebuild once he leaves. But that is if he leaves. All his comments reveal that he wants internet strangers to validate his bad decision to stay. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to fully support my wife financially? Original post. I, 50 male, and my wife, 43 female, have been together for 7 years, married for 18 months. No kids on either side. Our relationship has generally gone well. We're physically compatible and enjoy each other's company. Honestly, the conversation is not super deep. We mostly have general positive but surface-level interactions. From the start of our relationship, I've paid most of our joint expenses, dinners and vacations, and we both moved into a house I owned 4 years ago. That wasn't a big problem for me. I earn well and she was also making just over 6 figures and was able to buy herself what she wanted. She has a bit of fake clothes habit, but it doesn't really bother me. Over the last year, a few things changed in our relationship. Firstly, my wife left her job. She went out on leave but didn't return. Then we went on vacation, and while on vacation I had a serious medical issue, which meant we had to cut the vacation short. I spent 6 weeks in and out of hospital. My wife was supportive, like driving me to and from appointments, but didn't really engage with what I was going through. A few months after that, I had pretty much recovered. At that point, my mother passed away. I grew up outside the US, so went back to my family for the funeral. While I was with my family, my wife asked me if I'd consider an open relationship. To be honest, the medical issues had negatively impacted our intimate life. I felt the timing was inappropriate and my wife apologized. I came back from the funeral a couple of weeks later and went back to work, but things felt tense. Last week, my wife told me she was running out of money. This was the first time she'd mentioned any money issues. We've never had a joint bank account, but she is insisting that we open one, and I put my salary into it. We've never discussed that before either. I told her that I didn't feel very emotionally supported in the relationship, and I feel blindsided by what I saw as an ultimatum. She responded that maybe we should separate if I'm not going to step up and fully support her. Am I the a-hole for refusing? Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Not the a-hole. As an adult in an adult relationship, it's pretty crazy to expect someone you met at age 36 to support you without some kind of trade-off. No kids, I assume, so what she's doing all day? She sounds like she's pretty clearly said, I want to sleep with other people, and if you don't support me financially, we might as well separate. She is an aspiring actor. She's been in a few shows, but they pay little to nothing and takes up lots of time. Yeah, that is how it comes across to me as well. Not the a-hole, but your relationship sounds less about love and more about convenience. Are you together just so you are not alone? The marriage is young and may not be hard to get out of, but I wouldn't stay in such a relationship of what sounds like one of those if we haven't found love by X age, let's get married kind of situations. If she's ready to separate, then maybe it is time to dip out. This hurt to hear, probably because it's truer than I'd like it to be. I don't like being alone. At some point, I looked at all the people I dated and went, this is pretty good all things considered. But pretty good, not great or love of my life. She told you she wanted to sleep with other people when you went to bury your mother. Is being alone worse than that? Sigh, you are right, of course. But sometimes when I hear statements like this, it's like reading about people with terrible bosses who stick out their awful jobs because they don't have any financial cushion. 2 weeks without a paycheck and they're halfway to homeless. This is terrifying for them, and so they stick in this suboptimal situation, even though, in theory at least, there are many better jobs. I was adopted at birth. My adoptive mother, who recently died, was a narcissist who used me. I was smart, and she showed me off to her friends, which I hated. I had no friends of my own. Generally, my childhood sucked. I've made a much better run of my adulthood. Good jobs, my own friends, etc. But my relationship cushion is still thin despite 20 years of therapy. It doesn't take much for me to think maybe nobody actually loves me. I'm not looking for pity. But be aware that just because something seems like an obvious thing to do doesn't always make it easy. That is incredibly insightful and self-aware. Get back in the dating pool. Your friends love you. Girlfriend can be a good romantic companion, even if there isn't deep love there. You deserve better than what you have. Mini update. Thanks to everyone who commented. It's honestly pretty sobering and has forced me to confront some things about my marriage, but also about myself that aren't particularly pretty. We're sleeping apart tonight and I'm going to bed. Now for the full update. Well, it's been quite a whirlwind of a week. After we had the initial discussion, we didn't talk for almost a day. Then we came back with a mutual expression of WTF just happened in our faces and stared blankly at each other. I suggested that we take a time out to write down what was on our minds, that we could have each other read it, and that would be the basis for a more in-depth conversation. So we spent the day doing that. Boy, it did not go well. I wrote about how I perceived she was emotionally absent while I was sick. She really didn't understand what I meant, and I tried to explain, sometimes I just need someone to talk to. Her response was basically, all you want to do is talk, and I felt that was really cold. What she wrote was basically a diatribe, well, that's how it felt to me, about my legal obligation to support her. At one point, she said our marriage, quotes were hers, and I felt particularly hurt by that description. It was clear that we weren't on the same page, or even in the same book, about what the problems were. My wife then suggested counseling, and I agreed. Her therapist knows a marriage counselor. She sent us some intake forms, which ask us to rate our satisfaction with the marriage and the accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement of our partners. It was a miserable exercise, filling out the form and realizing just how low my ratings were. So that evening, I sat my wife down and said, "I scored is really low." She asked, "Should we bother talking more?" I said, no, I don't think this is going to work. She agreed pretty quickly and we canceled our appointment with a marriage counselor. We have an appointment with a divorce lawyer later this week. I'm probably going to owe spousal support. I'm not thrilled about that, but it's only money and I'll get over it. My wife understands she'll need to move out and started packing. How do I feel about this? Obviously, it's a big shock. At the same time, thanks for every comment on a previous post. It's clearly the right thing to do. There was nothing here worth saving. If she's making six-figure salary and you were only married 18 months, I doubt you'll have to pay support. She quit working and has drained whatever savings she had through her career years. I bet she either has a gambling issue or already has another sucker in the hook. She can get another job. I agree, but still could lead to the judge taking her side rather than his. My understanding is that this is just a calculator. The past year's income and expenses from both parties are plugged in and out comes a number. This is for temporary spousal support at least. I don't think there will be long-term support due to the marriage being short. For the spousal support, maybe the fact that she decided to quit her job could have an impact on the amount of support you owe. Yeah, plus it's not like it has been years since she left the job. I'm sure with a little effort, she could get a similar job in the field. Her resume is not stale. From what I understand, spousal support is based on the past year of marriage, when she wasn't working. Yay. It is half the length of the marriage. So it's not forever, but it doesn't matter why she quit her job. It's strict community property where I live. Get your own lawyer. How long has she been out of work? She left her job at her own volition, and if she hadn't been out that long, you will not owe support with a half-decent lawyer. I find spousal support to be such an interesting concept. It doesn't exist in my country, and I admittedly know little of the concept. But I think it probably should be applicable where someone has, say, stayed home with the children so that the other could earn a living, and so has missed out on a career and would likely struggle, which could keep people with no career prospects in bad situations. If me and my partner split, he would be much worse off than me because he's worked part-time jobs to cover childcare whilst I studied and worked. I think it's fair that he shouldn't be left high and dry after his sacrifices for our family, even if we don't work out. But when you've got access to a high-paying job like OP's wife and have no children or reason not to work, I find it really baffling. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my cheating little sister? Back when I was 10 years old, my mom cheated on my dad with his then best friend, which led to them having a nasty divorce. My mom almost immediately after finalizing it went and married a guy, which drove my dad into huge depression and ultimately ending himself. I was the one who found him after I came home from school at 12 years old. The sight traumatized me for years to come and has made me despise my mom and the idea of cheating and any cheater. Fast forward 14 years later, and my little sister's husband found dozens of videos and pictures of her with multiple different guys, including some of his and my friends. And that led to them having a huge fight where he ended up throwing her out of his house. And so she came running back to me for me to take her in, and I refused. She called me a huge a-hole, and I told her to shut both her mouth and legs up, and to go to mom and let her deal with this, since she knows a thing or two about cheating. And she left. Now her husband has filed for divorce and I fully support him. I have absolutely no sympathy for cheaters, and that includes my own sister. Now for the top comments. My sister cheated and I refuse to help her. I help her children and provide a safe place for them. But her? No. I'm also still in a good place with my former brother-in-law. He's still my family. Definitely not the a-hole. I cannot imagine how traumatizing that was to find your dad. I'm so very sorry. Not a-hole. Seems the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Sister learned that crap from somewhere. Good for you for not going down that path and refusing your sister. I loved my sister with all my heart, R.I.P., but I would not have condoned her cheating. I don't condone anyone doing it. I watched my mama go through that crap with my dad and my stepdad. I'm jaded AF when it comes to relationships for that reason. Stay strong and cut them freaking friends off. Good on you for that. Your sister sucks, your mom sucks, and you were right to not help her. She made her own choices even after your mother and father's history. So knowing that, you shouldn't help her when it's obvious you would have someone you will hate living with you, as she reopened your old wounds by cheating like she did. You did everyone a favor here by refusing her. Exactly. Not only did she know about how much I despise cheating and cheaters, but she cheated on her husband with my friends, which I saw as personal disrespect to me and her husband. She also slept with his best friend, who was his best man at their wedding. So she is just despicable to me now. That is just disgusting. It's a clear sign of how she doesn't care about anyone but herself. The fact she could cheat, not only on her husband but with her friends as well, then have the nerve to come to you for help, clearly shows she is a narcissist. So let your mother deal with her BS and get far away from them both, along with all those friends you had. I do hope you cut all of those friends off. Those aren't friends. I am dropping them. Screw them. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my sister to my wedding after she tried to sabotage my relationship? I, 27 female, am getting married in 2 months to my fiancé Jake, 29 male. We've been together for 5 years and I couldn't be happier. However, my relationship with my sister Lily, 25 female, has been rocky for the past year. Here's some background. Growing up, Lily and I were very close. She's always been the life of the party, charming and the center of attention. I've always been more introverted and happy to let her shine. When Jake and I started dating, Lily was thrilled and we all got along great. A year ago, things started to change. Jake got a promotion at work, which allowed us to buy a house. This seemed to trigger something in Lily. She started making snide comments about how I was lucky to have found Jake and how I wouldn't have been able to afford a house on my own. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just having a rough time. Then, at a family gathering, Lily got drunk and told everyone that Jake had hit on her when we first started dating. Jake was mortified and denied it immediately. I was shocked and didn't know what to think. Later, Lily apologized, saying she was drunk and it was just a joke. Jake assured me it never happened and I believe him. Since then, Lily has made several attempts to undermine my relationship with Jake. She would accidentally send me texts meant for her friends, saying things like, Jake isn't even that great, and she doesn't deserve him. It became clear she was trying to sabotage us. When I announced our engagement, Lily's reaction was lukewarm at best. She didn't offer to help with wedding planning and continued to make hurtful comments. The final straw came last month when I found out she told our mutual friends that Jake was only marrying me for my money, which is laughable because Jake makes more than I do. I decided enough was enough and told Lily she was no longer invited to the wedding. She burst into tears, saying I was overreacting and that she was just trying to protect me. My parents are now involved, saying I should forgive her because family's everything. They want me to reinvite her and keep the peace, but I feel like I need to stand my ground. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my sister to my wedding after she tried to sabotage my relationship? Yes, family is everything. So I will prioritize the family I'm starting with Jake. If you want to be a part of it, then drop it. Totally agree. Family's everything. Then mom and dad tell her to stop attacking my fiancé and myself. Tell her to stop making snide comments. It should have been nipped in the bud a long time ago, mom and dad. Mom and dad are basically saying it's okay to be rude to the bride and groom. But when the sister is uninvited, that's somehow wrong? What message does this send? Exactly. That family is everything line is so beautiful it brought a tear to my eye. Sniff. So why the heck didn't OP's parents tell Lily to stop her crappy behavior? Because it's hurting OP. Isn't OP family? A wedding is supposed to be celebrated by people happy to see the bride and groom happy, which Lily clearly is not. So we're jealous but should it be there? Not a-hole. If she's been this persistent in trying to break you guys up, she will probably cause a scene at your wedding. It's your day. Enjoy it. Not a-hole. God only knows what sort of scene she'd create at your wedding if you reinvited her. You need to tell your parents that if family is everything, then she wouldn't be acting the way she is, and it's her own fault she's not invited. And they can either back OP or stay home with sister bitch. I'm sure that OP has someone that can walk her down the aisle other than her father. Next story. Am I the a-hole for threatening to report my sister-in-law for child abandonment? My 23 female brother, 25 male, and sister-in-law, 24 female, live with me. They had a baby in December 22, and I expressly told them I wouldn't be able to watch him unless previously asked to. I wouldn't watch him for anything short of an absolute emergency, unless they had asked earlier and I'd agreed. All of this was said and agreed upon before he was born. Well, about 2 months after he was born, they started asking me to take him for a minute, then they'd leave. At first, it was short periods, but it gradually got longer and longer until I reminded them about our agreement. It stopped for a while, but eventually they started doing it again. This process repeated on and off until the baby was about 6 months old, and I decided I'd had enough. So my sister-in-law asked me to watch the baby for a minute, her exact words, and I told her, okay, I have plans in a bit though, so I can't watch him for long. She told me it wouldn't be long and walked out of the house. About 20 minutes passed and she's still not back. So I called her. She said she was about to walk into a movie and would call me when it was over. No? So I tell her, I have a job interview and I have to leave in 20 minutes. If you're not back by then, I will leave him in his crib and call the police to report an abandoned child. She arrived just as I was leaving the house and they've never left him with me like that again. But I still get so much crap during holidays and such when the entire family is together. My mother also complains that she now has to watch him for the last minute stuff they want to do. So I have to know, am I the a-hole? Edit to say, we all live in my parents' house together. I have lived there for almost 4 years and they only moved in just before the baby was born. So I have the habit of calling the house mine when technically it is not. To clarify, my parents do not live with us. They have an apartment. My parents were in the apartment way before I moved into the house. After we all moved out, they downsized and rented the house out. Their last tenants left about a month before I was discharged from the military, and my parents asked if I wanted to rent the house from them. I said yes and moved in, and I've been paying the mortgage. And since my brother moved in, we've been splitting the bills. My parents do not want to live in the house because they are old and have disabilities, and the house isn't really disabled friendly. My mother has diabetes, a torn MCL meniscus in her knee, and has dislocated her shoulder recently. My father has herniated disc in his back, and whatever the disease is called that slowly fuses your bones together, so is mostly in a wheelchair and occasionally uses a walker. The house is not designed for wheelchair use, so he can't even get to the bathrooms. He can only get to the living room and kitchen. Not the a-hole. They were exploiting you and you enforced your boundaries. Good for you. By the way, living with you, does that mean your apartment? Then give them a deadline to leave. Technically, we're living in my parents' house, so my parents make the call of who leaves and who goes. I've just lived in the house significantly longer, so I have the habit of calling it my house when it's technically not. Okay then, they're there to stay. But you are not their slave. And I find it significant that your mother is now complaining that she has to watch her grandchild. To whom is she complaining? To them or to you? Why is your family agreed that they need help but unwilling to provide it and willing to force you to do it? She complains to me. She has never complained to them about anything they've ever done to upset her. It has always been me. You didn't create this child. She is selfish for blaming you. Not a-hole. How can for a minute result in her almost walking into a movie theater? That is not a 1-minute thing. Your sister-in-law's dishonest. I probably would be more extreme and say, okay, I will start counting to 60. Once I hit 60, I'm going. No one can command your time without discussing with you. They all hold him for a minute trick, eh? My sister used to do that. You should absolutely use the threat of the police and child abandonment to nip this in the bud. My sister used to do this with her first child. She was 19/20 years old. It apparently hadn't gotten her fun out of her system. She would drop her son off just for an hour and didn't come back for 3 to 4 days. Once, she even left him with us for a week. And half the time, she didn't leave enough milk, diapers, or clothes. We had to go out and get them. Our mother wanted to tell her to stop doing it, but I told our mother that if she did that, my sister would never bring the baby over again. She was the type to cut off her nose to spite her face. So I started this little game where, when she came over with the baby, I would literally stand near the door so she couldn't sneak out of the house without the baby. I had loud bells on the other doors, so I would hear the door being messed with. It took a couple of months, but I was quite successful in curbing my sister's habit of leaving her child at our house. She once dropped off the baby knowing full well that the only one at home was our younger brother, who was 12 years old at the time. That time, I chewed her butt for a full day. Poor child, nearly in tears. He was so scared of doing something wrong. Last story. Am I the a-hole for kicking out my fiancé for letting my daughter lock her door? Around 2 years ago, my ex-husband / my daughter's father passed away in a house fire. My daughter, 14 female at a time, 16 female now, took this very hard. She became depressed and had self-ending tendencies and thoughts. I did everything I could to help her, including trying to talk to her, giving her space, getting a therapist, getting a therapy dog. I've done everything. Nothing has helped. About 10 months ago marks the first time she had an attempt on her life. She had a door locked and I wasn't able to get in the room for about 20 minutes. If I had waited longer, she may not have survived. To prevent this happening again, I took the locks off her door. Just to clarify, I never walk into my daughter's room, or anyone's, without knocking and allowing them to say I can come in, so it's not a privacy issue. My daughter has since then had one more attempt on her life, and I still haven't given her the locks back. About 2 weeks ago, my daughter asked me to let her have a door lock again. I explained to her why I won't let her have one, and she got upset and stormed off. 20 minutes later, my boyfriend/fiancé of 4 years, who has gotten very close with my daughter, asked me if I could give her a chance. I told him that if I do give her a chance and something happens to her, I would never forgive myself for it. We got into a pretty big argument about it, but it ended, and I didn't let her lock the door. 3 days later, I came home from work early and saw my daughter's backpack in the kitchen, which I had expected since she had taken the day off of school. What I didn't expect was for the house to be completely silent. This worried me since my daughter isn't a very quiet girl. She's always playing video games or playing music. She's never quiet. I went upstairs to her bedroom and knocked on the door. No answer. I knew she was in the room since I heard a fan on in her room and it's never on unless she's home. I knocked again and she still didn't answer, so I panicked and tried to open the door. The door was locked and I couldn't open it. I began to panic. I banged the door and was calling her and she didn't answer. I called 911 and explained to them what was happening and they got here and broke the door down. Turns out my daughter had her music blasting in her headphones and was taking a nap, so she didn't hear me. I asked her how she got the door to lock, and she told me that my fiancé had installed a lock earlier in the day before he went to work. I waited until my fiancé got home to confront him. It caused a huge argument. He said I was overreacting and that I should trust my daughter, that it's an invasion of privacy and she deserves the right to lock the door. We kept arguing back and forth and eventually I told him that I wanted him out of our house. By the way, I bought my house myself and paid the bills myself. He continued yelling at me as he gathered his stuff and stormed off. My daughter understands where I'm coming from and isn't as upset with me, whereas my fiancé hasn't called or texted since. So I'm assuming that we're over. Am I the a-hole for kicking him out? Not the a-hole. He way overstepped. It is your house and your daughter. He had no right to overrule you in regards to either. 100%. Though, am I the only one who noticed that fiancé plus no to door locks equals daughters who's angry and storms off, but no fiancé plus no door locks equals daughter who's just fine with it? The fiancé was advocating for the lock though. Maybe the daughter was okay with the no lock after seeing her mom break down like that and finally realized what locks versus no locks really meant to her. Not a-hole. You almost lost your child due to a locked door, and while she certainly could self-harm at another location or during the night while you sleep, you are her parent. You carry that responsibility and you provide her boundaries, and not your fiancé. You made your feelings clear to him and said no. He went behind your back and did it anyway. That's major betrayal, a huge violation of your trust, and it represents complete disrespect. Seems the trash took itself out. No, it hurts. Sorry. OMG. Been there. Spent time in the ER waiting for replacement. Still have some PTSD. We did not have locks in our bedroom doors for quite a while. Heck, I kept my knives locked up. Medications were under lock and key. Alcohol was under lock and key. Your child needs to know that her safety is your utmost concern. Make sure she knows you will do your best to respect her privacy. And she needs to know that it will take a while for you to trust enough to consider having locks on the doors again. Not a-hole. Wedding off. Immediately no contact. Especially since he knows the reason. Who the heck is he to go over your head on something like this? Nope. No contact. Done. Who the heck is he to go over your head on something like this? A bro who is always certain he knows best. A dude who can't ever be wrong. A Chad who wants to be the good cop to a bad cop. Discussing it is okay. Persisting the argument is already overstepping. Going behind her back to do it anyway is the point of no return. A nuclear option. I sincerely hope she drops this turd in the nearest toilet and flushes. Otherwise, she can expect more of the same for the duration of their relationship. For very far future consideration, most interior locking knobs, not deadbolt types, have a simple pin bypass to unlock. No key necessary.